It's inevitable that the targets will be called crazy, that the programs will be explained away as mass hysteria. This has often happened in the past with 500,000 U.S. citizens used as human guinea pigs. Cointelpro and MKULTRA purposefully use the strategy of making their targets look crazy as part of the strategy for keeping these illegal government operations secret. The human radiation experiments began exposing thousands of unknowing Americans to harmful or even lethal levels of radiation in 1943. This is just one story out of 500,000. In 1947, Mr. Elmer Allen sought help at a hospital in San Francisco for a cyst on his knee, an injury. Mr. Elmer Allen was injected with plutonium in the left leg, and the next day the leg was amputated. He told his best friend and his family doctor back home in Italy, Texas, that he thought he had been used as a human guinea pig. His best friend didn't believe him and avoided him afterwards, and his family doctor classified him as a paranoid schizophrenic in his permanent medical records. His family didn't find out the truth about what happened to Elmer until years after he had died. In 1995, the government decided to go public and held hearings and issued a report, but no one was punished. And essentially, the government hearings functioned as a whitewash.
I hope you will understand that just as Jewish fathers were placed in the ovens at Auschwitz, my father, Elmer Allen, was placed in his own private oven here in the United States of America. He was left there for 44 years, and the scientists occasionally took a peek inside to see if he was still alive. His survivors are pledged to tell the truth about this experiment for the next 50 or even 100 years if necessary, so that future generations will have more than lies, half-truths, and inconclusive reports when attempting to recount this real-life horror story.
The political activists of COINTELPRO were depicted as paranoid when they claimed the government was following them, harassing them, sabotaging their lives. When anti-war activist Abbie Hoffman told his government representatives, when he told the press, when he told his family and friends that he was being targeted and his life systematically destroyed, most, if not all of them, refused to believe him and avoided him afterwards. It was only when associates of Hoffman broke into FBI offices and stole FBI documents that proved the FBI was spending nearly half its time and resources on COINTELPRO. It was only then that some members of the press began to believe Hoffman. MKUltra was investigated by Congress, but the investigation narrowed its scope, and the true scope of the illegal program never became public. MKUltra survivors still live in fear in the shadows today. If victims tell a doctor or a therapist that as children they were drugged and tortured in government labs and behavior modification experiments to purposefully induce multiple personality disorder, they will be permanently classified as paranoid schizophrenics in their medical records. Some survivors report getting threats, harassment when they attempt to give public testimony. This functions today as a means of keeping the worst aspects of MKUltra a secret, even now. MKUltra was designed and run by government-funded psychiatrists and has evolved into the current program of microwave weapons torture and organized stalking that I call Monarch. Now, if one thinks abstractly about the problem, one would have to admit that it would be inevitable that the current victims, the Monarch victims of electromagnetic weapons targets, would be smeared as tinfoil hat people in cases of mass hysteria, because all the previous victims of all the other illegal government experimentation and targeting have all suffered the exact same fate. Their argument to say that it can't happen here or that something this big cannot be kept quiet is untrue, because all the previous illegal government programs involving 500,000 victims did happen here. They were kept secret for decades upon decades. The argument that this can't happen here, and if it did, it couldn't be kept secret very long, these are demonstrably false arguments. The use of human guinea pigs by the Department of Defense for weapons development programs successfully used 500,000 U.S. citizens without pause or interruption. COINTELPRO operations waged counterinsurgency war against progressive organizations and made hit lists of individual activists beginning at least from the 1950s and continued for decades. MKULTRA behavior modification experiments traumatized children and adults, breaking minds and lives without serious interruption from 1953 until the 1970s. These atrocities did happen here. They continued for generations without serious challenge, remaining completely off the public radar. To claim for 1 minute that the current illegal operation targeting political activists and whistleblowers with torture and murder using the latest military breakthrough in anti-personnel weaponry couldn't happen here is not only a false claim, it is criminally negligent, because this is the way it has always happened before. In the end, the guilty parties always got away with it every time. No one ever went to jail for these illegal programs. No one was ever punished for Cold War weapons development programs. The figure of 500,000 citizens used as human guinea pig, this is the government's own figure. It's a conservative estimate. And that we even know about the human guinea pig experiments at all is because the government itself decided to hold public hearings, and they purposely aired their dirty laundry in the mid-90s.